Okay, good evening. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Larry Howe, and I'm a member of Plano Solar Advocates. We're a grassroots volunteer group here in Plano with a mission to increase awareness and expand the use of solar energy for electricity generation. Bob Litwins is on the call with me, and he'll be doing most of the presentation. And we'd like to thank the Live Green and Plano teams for collaborating with us on this Solarize Plano project. Many of our Plano Solar Advocate volunteers are also Live Green and Plano volunteers, which is how we got started. Also like to mention the North Texas Renewable Energy Group. It's a great organization to help people in the community learn a little bit more about renewable energy. They meet on a monthly basis, and so again, encourage you to Google North Texas Renewable Energy Group to learn a little bit more about that. So we're here tonight to discuss the Solarize Plano project. So a couple of quick items before we get started. One, if you're not already enrolled, after the meeting, after the meeting you decide that you're interested, please enroll so that we can keep you on our mail list for future project communications. Also, we really hope that everybody who has signed up, and we've had a good turnout in previous in-person presentations, and we're trying the conference calls this week. We've had a good turnout. We'd really hope that everybody who signed up would be able to eventually go solar, but we know in reality that might not turn out to be the case. So we also want to talk a little bit tonight near the end of the presentation about some other options for people if solar is not a good thing for you to do or doesn't work out for your situation right now. And also, one other thing, first things first, remember that our cleanest and our least expensive source of energy is the negawatt, or negative watts, which is basically conservation and energy efficiency. So in the form of conservation, remember to turn your lights off. In the terms of example of energy efficiency, consider using LED or CFL light bulbs instead of traditional bulbs. But energy efficiency is really a great source of energy, and we should all be taking advantage of that. But our discussion tonight is about solar energy, so at this point I'll turn it over to Bob Litwins, who will go through the presentation. Bob, if you unmute yourself, we should be able to get started.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, there you go, Bob. I can hear you, so I guess we're good to go.
Okay, all right, everybody else is on mute, I think. Good evening, welcome everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to attend the call. We've got some good information. Again, my name's Bob Litwins. We're going to move through the slides pretty quickly, but this will leave us ample time for having a question and answer session at the end. So if you think of questions along the way, just kind of jot them down, and we'll definitely get to them. I think we've got a fairly small audience on the call, so it shouldn't be an issue getting to all the questions at the end. All right. So with that said, let's move to slide 2. This slide we put in the presentation just to kind of remind everybody about electricity prices and what affects electricity prices. And this was a timely article that came out July 21st, right before our actual Solarize Plano article came out the next day. But the article really talked about electricity prices in Texas being on the rise, and one of the great quotes in here that was captured is the largest single factor in the price of electricity is the fuel cost. Well, when you're thinking about solar and looking at solar as an option, definitely look at it as fuel cost of 0 in this case. So when you're comparing these two technologies, these two energy technologies, you don't have to worry about fuel costs with solar, and obviously we do with utility generated power. So it was a great article, and it was timely in regards to this program that we're offering now. So all right, let's move to slide 3. Slide 3, we'll get into a little Solar 101. The picture represented here is a real basic solar system. Obviously, you have solar panels, solar modules on the roof. There's roughly 8 modules in this case. Their function is to turn the sun's photons into DC electricity. That DC electricity is fed to number 2 here, which is an inverter that converts the DC current into AC for use in your home. That AC is fed directly into your electrical panel in your house, which feeds the loads that are used in your home. The solar power is used first in your home. If there's not enough solar power, then the grid supplements that power. This is what's called a grid-tied system. They work in conjunction with each other. If in some circumstances these systems will produce more power at certain times of the day when you're not using loads in your house, so that has the potential to feed power back out onto the grid in that case, and that's what's referred to as net metering or sell back in some cases, and we'll talk more about that in some of the further slides. The panels that are on the roof, these panels are roughly 3 by 5, so you can get a rough space consideration from that. The inverters sometimes, and we'll talk about this more a little bit in some of the further slides as well. So the inverters could be actually mounted under each panel, and that's referred to as a microinverter, and it wouldn't be a central inverter where the whole string of modules feeds one inverter. So there's some advantages to microinverters. We'll discuss those a little bit more later. So they prevent some shading issues, and there's some maintenance and operational maintenance aspects of them that are advantageous as well, but we'll discuss a little bit of that later as well. All right, let's move to slide 4. One of the first considerations in thinking about a PV system is what size system do I need? There's several factors that you need to consider when sizing. Some of these we've sent out in emails kind of as homework, and hopefully you've looked at that a little bit and have some rough ideas, but we'll go through each one of these 4 bullet points in a little more detail in the slides to follow. First one, available roof space orientation, south facing and tilt angles, and shading are important. The homework assignments I believe we sent out were having you look at the percentage of annual consumption you wanted to offset with solar. Obviously, financing budget options are important for everyone and need to be considered. And then, as I briefly mentioned in the previous slide, net metering or AC power that you send back to the grid needs to be considered as well. All right, so let's move to slide 5, and we can talk about roof space orientation and shading. This Google Maps picture is a representation of a house with some solar panels on it. In general, Google Maps, the top of the map faces north unless you rotate it, but I encourage everyone to kind of take a look at their own homes and get an idea of south-facing roof space. Is there roof space available? How is it oriented? Are there any trees that could potentially be shading those areas? Those are all things that will need to be considered, and that actual solar installers will do site assessments to get a more precise view of these things. But with Google Maps, you can get kind of a rough idea of your situation, and if you've got any potential problems that you need to look at it with regard to orientation, shading, and roof space. All right, let's move on to slide 6. These are some example calculations. These use example annual energy usage of 10, 15, or 20 kilowatt hour, or 20,000 kilowatt hours per year, and so we've broke that down into a small, medium, large type system. These may not be applicable for everybody's situation. Some people's energy usage is a little higher, some people's energy usage is a little lower, so you have to consider that as well. But these are just some examples to give you an idea of the sizing of the systems, so that you can move on to do more accurate cost examples. So these examples go anywhere from, again, from 10,000 kilowatt hours per year to 20,000 kilowatt hours per year. You would need to adjust if your usage is more or less. The assumptions in here are that annual production from a 1 kilowatt system is about 1,400 kilowatt hours per year, and that's here in North Texas for a south-facing installation. Those numbers are usually pretty conservative. In a lot of cases, you will get more production, but we like to be conservative in the example calculations so that you actually get into a better situation in the actual installation. So, all right, let's move on to slide 7. This is our first cost example. The key assumptions here are that the retail cost, installed cost, is $4.25 per watt. These are some numbers that we have heard in the past few months, and then our next slide will actually be a different representation of installed retail cost. But for this example, we've taken a large system and done the cost calculations for a large system, which is 20 panels. If you were using 10,000 kilowatt hours per year annually for your electricity usage, this large system would cover 67% of your annual usage, so it's a pretty good sized system. If you go through the numbers of the system cost calculations, the easiest way to look at it is to look at the gray box on the upper right-hand side. If we start out with a total installed cost of $20,000, we subtract the Encore utility incentive. I know there's a co-serve, at least one co-serve person on the call. This incentive would not directly apply in this case, but for most Encore utility customers, it would apply in this case. So you would reduce the cost by that utility incentive. You would additionally reduce the cost using a 30% federal and investment tax credit. That investment tax credit is actually applied on your next tax filing. It's a direct reduction of your tax burden for that year that you purchased the system. So that would directly reduce your taxes by that 4320 amount. So you come up with an overall net system cost of $10,080, which is roughly half of the original installed cost. And so you can take that and apply it towards a medium system or a small system, and you can also adjust for annual electricity usage and get some very good estimates about what size system you want to have for your home. Part of that is depending on whether it will fit on your roof and that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. The third bullet point in this slide is an important one. We like to stress this. This is taking the lifetime of the system. In this case, 25 years. The PV systems can last considerably longer than that, but we use 25 years as a conservative estimate. If you multiply that times the annual production of the system, which in this case is 6720, and that's based on the previous 1,400 kilowatt hours per year for 1 kilowatt system. You get the total number for the lifetime of the system of 168,000 kilowatt hours. If you take the net system cost and divide it by the kilowatt hours, you come up with a direct number, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. That is not a bad price. You look at typical prices for utility power these days, and they're going to be anywhere from 8 to 13 cents. It's definitely a good consideration to look at from the financial aspect. So definitely consider that when you're thinking about the cost of a system and the benefits. After that 25 years, then it's free basically. So this is again a very important aspect of solar that we like to stress looking at from the financial perspective. All right, so moving to slide 8, this is the a similar example, except we've adjusted the retail cost to $3.25 per watt. These are kind of the ranges that we have heard about lately, and when we get our RFP back, we'll have some more solid numbers, but we're hoping that they're going to be in the lower ranges here, so that will obviously adjust all the pricing and the per watt price and the overall price, and it obviously adjusts the cents per kilowatt hour that you would actually look at too. So you can look at both of those slides, do some comparisons on those, and we can talk about those a little more after we get through the slides. All right, let's move on to slide 9. Here we get into some financing options. Obviously, paying cash is one of your first options, and cash doesn't mean just cash. I mean, it means basically you have the funding to be able to cover this. There's various different cash funding options available that some companies will, they take different options. So, but basically that means you have the capital set aside to do the project, pay for it up front. And that's certainly a good way to go if you can do that. Not everyone can do that, so obviously we have to look at other financing options. One, with our collaboration with Live Green in Plano, they have what's called the City of Plano Smart Energy Loan. This is a great low-interest loan. I think it's 5.7%, and it has a term rate up to 20 years. It's got some very easy qualification. You can qualify in I think a day or two at the most. So it's a very good loan program. The only caveats to this are they do require that you do a home energy audit, and some basic weatherization upgrades may be required, but it definitely it's a good program to take advantage of. Great interest rates and easy and available through the Credit Union of Texas. One of the other options is the solar installers and companies that we'll be working with, and we'll have this in the RFP. They do have some financing options. Usually they're not as attractive as the smart, say for instance, the smart energy loan, but they do have some options, and once we get the RFP back and get those proposals in hand, we'll have more information on that at that time. All right, let's move to slide 10. We talked a little bit about net metering earlier, and that's where excess power may be produced and sent back to the grid. This is an example of my system. I have a fairly small system, but I still feed power back to the grid at times when I'm not using any energy in my home during the middle of the day. Typically when solar system, PV systems are producing a lot, if you are not using all that energy in your home during the middle of the day, then it does get fed back to the grid. It's broken down by month here, and you can look at those. The red bars, the negatives, are basically power that's being sent back to the grid. The annual data up top is probably easier to look at. So from a solar perspective, the energy produced was about 3,500 kilowatt hours for the whole year, and out of that, about 1,200 kilowatt hours were net metered or sent back to the grid. And in my case, I do have a retail electric provider who pays me retail value for that. So whatever I'm paying for electricity, they're paying me back directly for the energy that I'm feeding back to the grid. So if we look at slide 11, we'll talk about some of that a little bit more. Some of the other considerations with net metering are the biggest one, I think, is Texas does not have a state-mandated net metering provision in place, but some retail electric providers, whether it be TXU or Green Mountain or a couple others, they do have programs that mitigate this, so they will help you with those programs in paying for excess power that you're generating. Not all retail electric providers will do this, but there are some options out there, fortunately, for people who have solar PV. In order to avoid any real overage in energy production going out to the grid, the sizing of the system is important. You don't really want to have a too large a system because you could be feeding more back than the retail electric providers are going to pay for. They do have some limits on what you can feed back. And we do have a little bit more information on some of those retail electric providers out there that we'll be glad to provide. The last bullet here is because Texas does not have a state-mandated net metering provision in place, we really urge you to contact your state legislators and ask them to establish those policies. 43 other states have those policies in place. Texas does not yet have it, but the more constituents they hear from, hopefully that legislation can make it through committees and actually get out to have a vote and hopefully get put in place. Okay, so that's net metering. Let's move to slide 12 and look at some other considerations. Once you get past doing some rough sizing and doing some cost estimates, part of that and a continuation of that will be a site assessment of your home. And this is by the solar installer. This is after the RFP process is in place. The solar installer won't count only on Google Maps to determine what's going on out there in your house. They need to come out. They need to do shading analysis, so they have tools that they can do an on-site shading analysis. If you have shading issues, microinverters can definitely help. And how microinverters help is with microinverters, one panel can be shaded some and won't affect the other panels. That's one of the big advantages to microinverters, whereas a central inverter, if one panel is shaded partially, it can affect the whole string of panels. So that's one big advantage, again, to microinverters. So they can look at that, determine if there's going to be an issue, and perhaps suggest microinverters as opposed to central inverter. They'll also look at south-facing roof area, any size limitations for that. They're going to take a look at the electrical panel, make sure that it's safe, has available breaker spots. Roof structure is something that they'll take a look at as well to make sure there's adequate bracing, make sure that the actual structure itself is capable of holding up the roof-mounted solar array. Age and condition of the roof is also important. If you've got a poor condition roof, it's certainly worthwhile to consider replacing it. If it's a fair roof, it may need some further evaluation to make sure that it's not going to need to be replaced anytime soon, because you don't want to have to replace the roof soon after you've put your solar array up, because it will be costly to remove and replace the system. Other notes, this is some of the questions that we've had. Roof-mounted PV systems should be added to your homeowner's policy, and that's the full retail value, not the discounted value after tax credits or incentives. That's to ensure that in case of a loss, you can replace the system. There are property tax exemptions for renewable energy systems, so it will not add to your assessed value for your property taxes, so your taxes won't be affected by having a renewable energy system. And going along with the homeowner's insurance policy, we've included some hail testing standards here. Most panels are tested to roughly 1-inch hail at 23 meters per second. I don't know exactly what that is in miles per hour, but they're tested to standards that are kind of industry standards for typical hailstorms. Larger hail, they're at risk as well as your roof being at risk, as well as everything else being at risk when we get into large size hail. So we can talk a little bit more about that. Just as an example, I had a hail claim on my roof last year. My roof was damaged, but my panels were not. It was not an extraordinary storm, but it actually affected my roof more than it affected my panels. The insurance company paid for removing and replacing my panels in order to replace the roof underneath the panels. So if I had not had it on my insurance policy, obviously that wouldn't have happened. So we do stress that it is important to add it to your homeowner's policy. All right, moving moving to slide 13. Now we get into some project timeline information. The RFP has been issued. It's out. The solar companies are working on it diligently at this point. We are expecting responses back, and they will be back by August 7th. The other critical date here is we'll go through some shortlisted selections and then some interviews and have a final company selected by August 16th. From there, customer information for those committed customers who are ready to move forward are going to be released to the companies, and from August 16th through to September 15th, the installers will be working with homeowners to sign contracts and get utility incentives in place, get permitting in place, and get installations done from September 15th through October 31st. So this is our proposed timeline. It could change. It could get pushed up a little bit, but we're working hard to keep it at these dates, but we'll definitely let everyone know if anything changes with this. We are still looking for more volunteers to help with the RFP review process. So if anybody has an interest in being on that committee, definitely let us know. We're trying to get a small committee together to do that process, and that will be coming up very soon. So you have to be available for some dates here in the very near future that we can let you know what those dates are. All right, moving to slide 14. Next steps for you as participants. Look at the information we've presented. Look at your roof in Google Maps. Try to get an idea of the age from what you know from your house. Decide if you're ready to commit the necessary funding to make the energy investment. It's a long-term investment, but it's a good long-term investment. Your investment and your payback from this goes long beyond your ROI, which a lot of people like to focus on, but these systems, again, will last typically 25, 30, 35 years, so you can produce energy for a long time with these systems past your return on investment. If you are planning on using or you want to use the Plano Smart Energy Loan Program, get the application started now. As we mentioned, energy audits are needed before you can actually do the PV system install, so you would have to go through that process if you haven't. Another consideration and next step, if you do live in a neighborhood with a mandatory HOA, review and complete the checklist that we've provided here in this link for Solar San Antonio. They've got a great checklist out there that basically lets you look at it, answer some questions, and then the primary thing is to notify your HOA that you do plan to install PV solar, and then proceed unless the HOA attempts to block you. And then we can all get together. Plano Solar Advocates will assist in that process if there are issues. But do know that House Bill 362 was passed in 2011, and this bill prevents homeowners associations from preventing you from putting up solar panels. So the legislation is there. We just need to work with the HOAs to make sure that they're aware and that installations can proceed in a manner that everybody can agree to. All right, slide 15. So Larry talked early on about everybody may not be a good candidate. Maybe it's not right for you now. What are your options if you're not a good fit or you're not ready to commit at this point? Consider a future shared community solar program. These solar programs are across the country working pretty well for people who want a small piece of a larger system, basically a shared system that you can purchase one or two panels or something in that line, and we're hoping to also these programs are good for other people, like people who rent, people who are in apartments, things like that. So there's a lot of people out there who can't put solar on their homes, so these shared community solar programs are a great idea, and they're starting to spring up everywhere, and we're looking into possibilities about doing something like that here in North Texas in the future. Also consider a renewable energy rate plan through your retail electric provider. There's a lot of good wind plans out there. There are other renewable energy plans that you can go through your retail electric providers and get. It's a good way to subsidize renewable energy without having to buy, your own system at that time. If you're not ready for other reasons, consider reevaluating next year. There are also some very attractive lease programs out there. While this program we're doing, the group purchase program, does not have a lease option, there are some other companies out there who are doing a lot of lease options. It may be an option for you. Also consider, if you can't do it for your own home, help other institutions, schools, churches, or faith-based organizations and other buildings in the community to help them go solar. It's a good opportunity to learn more about solar and actually get it installed without having it on your home, but you may have it in some organization that you're working with frequently. Okay, slide 16, Q&A. We're at that point where I think we're ready to entertain questions, and Larry, I guess we'll go from there.